Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our third panel for Undergraduate Careers Exploration Week. Today we're going to be talking all about careers in teaching and education. So we have two amazing SCS alums who are teaching at two different institutions. We're going to learn more from them about what teaching looks like and what you can do right now as students as you're interested in career paths in teaching. So the session is recorded. As I said, the recording will be available next week on the SCS Careers YouTube channel and also our Media Space channel. But if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. Again, since we have a smaller group, you can probably do that. Or if you're uncomfortable asking directly, you can also message it to me. But yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna hand it over to our alumni to just first introduce themselves. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, what your major was when you were here at Illinois, a little bit about what you teach, and then we'll go from there. So since Jeff is first on my screen, I'm gonna
Oh,
hand it over to Jeff.
all right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, and hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I guess my story is I went to high school myself in a small town called Gibson City, which isn't too far from Champaign. And I originally went to the U of I in aerospace engineering. But freshman year, on a personal note, I broke up with my high school girlfriend, and it was a really crummy experience. And I remember I was standing on the roof of the Cranach Center, which is where I kind of went to think about things. And I thought, this is a crummy experience. I want to do something helpful with my life instead. And not that I was planning on becoming a serial breakup or anything like that. But so I decided to try to help people instead. And so that's kind of how I got into teaching. I'd worked with young people before. I'd worked at McDonald's and throughout high school and college. And so most of those employees were young people. So I enjoyed training them and working with them. I enjoyed their enthusiasm and optimism. And so teaching really, really called to me. And so I ditched aerospace engineering. And at the time, I was fortunate enough to have a really, really great chem professor, Dr. Stephen Zumdahl, who's since retired. And I really enjoyed his class. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to become a chemistry teacher. I had had a less than stellar chemistry experience in my high school. We didn't have a very good teacher. We were in a small school again, so it wasn't a great experience. But in Dr. Z's class, I could really kind of see what chemistry can do for people and for myself. And so then after jumping through some hoops, I don't know if you've looked into the certification process or the College of Education process, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And I think they've made it easier now than it was back then. But I eventually got my certification and I ended up teaching not too far from where I grew up or went to college. And that's in Downs, Illinois, which is between Champaign and Bloomington, at a little school called Tri-Valley. It has enrollment of about 350 or so. And I started off teaching chemistry, four sections of chemistry, one section of AP chemistry, and one section of physics. Over the years, that assignment kind of changed. And now I'm doing one section of AP Chem still, um, three or four sections of physics, and then usually like an earth and space or something like that. So I've kind of shifted more to physics than chemistry. But I always say that physics is kind of like my redheaded stepchild. I kind of adopted it and love it like my own, but yet chem is always where my heart's at. So I always go back to that and always really, really enjoy teaching that. So I've been doing that now I graduated from UIUC with a bachelor's in chem in 99, and then I got a master's in teaching of chem in 2001. And so this is my 23rd year now of teaching. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
So thank you for that introduction, Jeff. Arianna, over to you.
Hi, my name is Arianna Fiore. It's nice to meet you guys. I graduated from U of I in 2021, so just a few years ago, and I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry with a minor, obviously, in secondary ed, and then I also do have a math endorsement on top of my science chemistry endorsement. So that's kind of the basics, but I grew up in Palatine, Illinois, so northwest suburbs of Chicago. If you're familiar with that area, I went to Fremd High School. Little different than Jeff. My school had around 3,000 kids, my high school. And so my graduating class was like 750 around there. And so I really kind of always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. Even from when I was little, I have a younger brother, and I would make him like math worksheets to do for fun. And so I always kind of knew that, but I didn't really know what I wanted to teach. Originally, going into high school, I thought I wanted to teach English. And then I took chemistry my sophomore year, and I just fell in love with my chemistry teacher. And that just kind of really spoke to me of like the power of, what a good teacher can do and kind of like bring out in you. And so I was like, okay, no, I think I want to go more into science. And then math, I just kind of have always loved. And I was kind of torn between the two. And so I decided to have enough math credits to be able to get a math endorsement as well. And so graduated from Friend, and then went obviously to U of I, and then did student teaching in Buffalo Grove High School. So that is, again, northwest suburbs area. And so this is my third year teaching. I had my first 2 years were at Prospect High School in Mount Prospect, again, northwest suburbs. And my first year I taught all chemistry, honors and regular. And then my second year, they actually threw me kind of into the deep end. I had 2 regular chemistry, 1 physics, and 2 algebra 1s. And so I kind of was able to pull some math in. And then just due to staffing reasons, they just didn't have room for me the next year. And so this is my third year, is my first year at Wheaton, Warrenville South, which is where I currently am right now, teaching think about it, 3 sections of honors chemistry and 2 sections of algebra 2 trig. And so I really enjoy that split. I think it's a really unique kind of combination to get to see kids kind of on both ends. I actually have 4 kids overlap, and so I see 4 kids twice a day, which is really cool. I was actually told today by my boss that I'm all chemistry for next year. And so yeah, literally like an hour ago. But yeah, I will miss math, but I definitely, like kind of like Jeff said, chemistry is really where my heart is for sure. And it's just great. It's a great profession. I love my students. They really are what make the job amazing. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get more into that, but that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Since we have a smaller group, I was wondering if the students, you'll be willing to maybe share a quick introduction, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, why you're here, and if you're interested in teaching, you can also tell us a little bit about that. Whoever wants to go.
Yeah, I can go first. So my name is Lily. I'm a chemistry major, also with a secondary education minor. So me and Andrew are actually in a lot of classes together this semester and everything. We're at the same point in the program. But yeah, so I transferred here to U of I last academic year, so it's my second year here. And yeah, so I've always been interested in chemistry as well as teaching, so I've decided to combine them.
Yeah, I can go next. I'm Andrew. I've been here my 3 years, and I came in wanting to do research and wanted something with a little bit more product that I could see throughout my career, or a little bit more involvement, and took up the secondary education minor.
Awesome. Labus, I don't know if you want to share something, or if you want to put it in the chat, that works for me too. But at this point, if you all have any questions for our panelists, please, the floor is open for you. I'm just gonna be here in the background, kind of facilitate our conversation, but this session is basically for you and an opportunity for you to ask our panelists any questions. So please go ahead with any questions that you have.
One question I have is, especially because I'm in like the secondary ed program right now, is what would you say was like the most valuable course, like either education or chemistry or anything, for like what you do currently?
Okay, I guess I can go first. I would say, I can't remember the name. I know it wasn't that long ago, but I guess I would say the lab course my senior year that where it was like a small cohort of just the chemistry people, and where we were making labs, like we were writing the labs, and then we, like, every week we would act like students for the people, for like the people that made the labs. And so we would do it, and then we would give feedback on their labs to basically say like, oh, you know, this was clear, this was unclear, like these questions, maybe add these questions or something like that. And so and then we would like rotate every week. So at the end of the semester, I think we had written like 3 labs, and then we used that as part of our like final like unit plan that we had to make. And so I think making that unit plan was really helpful in terms of like content creation, because I think a lot of times, like, especially like newer teachers and stuff, like kind of get handed a lot of stuff, but it's nice to be able to have had that experience to actually be creating it, especially labs. Because I feel like that can kind of be, I don't know, I mean, I love doing labs, but it's definitely, you know, there's that pressure of making sure that like you're fitting them in the right way into the curriculum, or like they're actually being beneficial and like the students are getting something out of them. And it's not just like going through the motions or something like that. And so I think that was really helpful to see like other labs made by other, like, you know, peers, and then getting like feedback on like my own labs, and then ultimately making like that final unit plan, and like actually writing the lesson plans, and like thinking about like, how do I introduce this? How do I, you know, where does this kind of fit in the sequence? So I think in terms of the chemistry, like that class was really helpful. The education classes, I cannot think. They were all really helpful. I know that's a bad answer, but I'm going to pass it over to Jeff. And if I think of something, I will let you know.
That sounds like a really useful class, the writing a lab class, because that's something that we really don't have much experience with as students. I mean, we've all kind of explained things to people as when we are students to other students, so we're kind of familiar with the teaching thing, but the lab thing is totally new. And you have so many variables there. You got safety too, and you have and you want it to mean something, like you said, not just a hands-on little side activity that doesn't relate to what you're doing. So sounds like a really good class. As for me, I'm kind of in a similar boat with my education classes. To be honest, and I'm sure they've changed since I've been there 23 years ago, but to be honest, I did not find my education classes especially practical for the classroom situation. They weren't really helpful for me. Student teaching, of course, was phenomenal because you actually have to do it, and so you learn the most just doing something. But that said, I did have some good educational classes, and in fact, as I was just thinking about my answer, I realized that the most helpful classes were also all the classes where I enjoyed the teacher the most. They were the best teacher. And so it just kind of reinforces what Arianna was saying about the value that a good teacher can really change your idea on education and just the learning process, not just the content, but just your attitudes in the classroom. So my most useful classes then would be chemistry wise, freshman chem with Dr. Zumdahl, because that's pretty much all the content that you need to teach high school chemistry. Unfortunately, is you go through all 4 years of chem or more, and you really just need a year. You need freshman chem and a smidgen of organic, and really, honestly, that's all you need. So content-wise, definitely freshman year, but then also just the experience of having a really good teacher who can really teach well and explain things well, and who cares about students. That was great by example. And then education-wise, similarly, my ed psych class was taught by Dr. David Zola. And as I was also thinking about preparing this, I realized that I could name like almost every teacher I've had in my entire educational career. Again, going back to the fact that teachers can have, especially my good ones, but also then my really bad ones too. And so Dr. David Zola really stood out as one of the best ones because true, he had an advantage in that he was teaching educational psychology, which was about learning, the process of learning. So obviously he knew how to teach because he was teaching about teaching. But even so, his enthusiasm and his approach to class really changed my idea of what a teacher can do, and how learning can be like an edutainment kind of thing. It's educational, but yet it's also entertaining, and the two really can mesh well if done correctly. So then those 2 classes stand out the most for me.
I was just gonna say ed psych was amazing. I had Dr. Zola before he unfortunately passed, like one of his last few classes. Yeah. That was all I was gonna say. Yeah. Great teacher though, fabulous.
Yeah.
Curious, Ariana, who did you have for your first year chemistry at Illinois?
Oh gosh. Okay. And I had Andino as
Mhm.
for not first, but I think second year. I want to say Marville. Is that Kelly? No? Yes.
Marvel.
I
There's a Marvel.
can't remember, but probably
Marville.
students will.
Yes, I
Marvel.
think she
Okay,
teaches
yes.
102.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're saying yes. I think yeah. Marvel was one of the first year. And Dino, no, I think it was second semester, first year. Yeah, wow, I'm really reaching in the brain. Yeah, I think it was them. Yes.
And which professor do our current students have? Do you think they had an impact on you in terms of deciding about teaching?
Well, like I said, I did transfer here, so I didn't have any like the Gen Chem professors here, but I did have Dr. Jordan Axelson for organic chemistry. I'm currently a TA for her as well, so she definitely, I really like how she teaches. I really admire her, so that I feel like also influenced my decision as well.
I had her for organic chemistry as well. Yes, remember that.
I think similar with TAing under people, I think really shows more of the doors. I know for my first year, I had Dr. DeCoste, who worked very closely with Zumdale. And I think it really did shape how I looked at chemistry.
Yes, yes, he was very good. He was kind of my hero at the time because he kind of blazed the trail for chem teaching.
Their names are on so many textbooks.
Right.
Amazing. Thanks for that question, Lily. Any other questions?
Would you recommend getting other endorsements besides chemistry?
I mean, I was personally, is my mic on? Okay. I was personally always torn between chemistry and math. Like I feel like at the beginning of every semester, I would always kind of have this like mental just or like internal struggle of like, do I want to change my major to math? Like it was just this like back and forth where like there were times where I almost did. And so I always was kind of torn between the two because I just loved them so much. So I would say if you truly find a passion in like another content, then definitely go for it, especially with the science. Like the other science endorsements are, I think, a little easier to get because you're already taking like physics classes and like bio classes and like earth science classes and stuff like that. So those are even easier. I just personally never wanted a physics endorsement or wanted a biology endorsement because I don't necessarily like loved those classes. But I knew I loved math. And so that's why I got that one. So I would say, I mean, yes, it makes you more marketable for sure. So like there's no denying that. So in short, I would say yes, and find something that you would actually want to teach, because as soon as you have that endorsement, you are like a district can put you into those classes to teach and you really have no other choice. So just be aware of that. Like for me, I basically have signed myself up now to teach any math class except AP. I believe AP, yeah, I need extra for that, but basically any math class, and I'm okay with that. And so as long as you are okay with that, then I would say 100%, it's never a bad thing. It makes you more marketable.
Yes, I would agree with that entirely, completely. I've had this math endorsement for 22 years because I just had to take an extra couple classes, and I found out that I'll be teaching basic geometry next year for the first time ever. So yeah, it comes in handy, makes it more valuable in your school district too. And especially since it is usually only a couple more classes to take. I mean, with your physics load and math load, you're almost there anyways.
This is a little bit of a different topic question, but what are your guys' like experiences or like opinions on like NGSS and like things like that, anchoring phenomenon? I don't know. That's just kind of what we're really focused on right now currently in our methods class. So I'm just kind of wondering how that applies to like your actual teaching.
I'll go and go first. I'm old enough to remember when they first came out, and when they first came out, I was very excited to see what they were, because before there wasn't any real clear direction So I would just kind of pick up things from other states because Illinois standards weren't real great either. And when I saw them for the first time, I just kind of stared at them with a blank face and then closed my browser window, and that was it, because they're very dense, as you know, and very difficult to unpack. There's a lot there. And to be honest with you, I don't use them to guide my teaching much. That said, I do find a lot of it, some of it useful, especially the idea of the cross-cutting concepts. And because it's a nice example of what science is. And I think there's definitely value in teaching the methods of science and what sets science apart from other disciplines. So I especially like the cross-cutting concepts, and I do refer to them in class. I don't explicitly say, hey, these are the NGSS cross-cutting concepts, but I do explain, like looking for patterns and evidence and that kind of stuff. So they don't, they definitely don't guide my everyday teaching. And as far as I know, this other science teachers in my district don't refer to them as gospel. We just kind of do what we think needs to be done, what students need to learn to be successful later. But there are some approaches that I appreciate in them.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with basically everything Jeff said. I have never said the word anchoring phenomena since I graduated, but I've used it like in my teaching just naturally, but I've never, said those words again. And again, like I haven't said like, or thought about like the cross-cutting concepts, but I've definitely like reached for like patterns, or like we say like the story so far. And like something else I forgot to mention, Wheaton Warrenville does modeling curriculum. And so I basically had to learn an entire new curriculum this year for chemistry. It's strictly based on, like the chemistry modeling curriculum, which I think they talked about a little bit. I was a little intimidated at the start, but I'm definitely liking it more than I thought I would. It's very different, very, very different. The order of topics is different. The approach is different. It's very different than what I taught 2 years at Prospect, which was still inquiry-based, but a little bit more traditional sense. And so we like the modeling kind of has its own like standards and like targets and stuff. And so that's kind of what we use to lead us, I would say, more so than like pulling up like the exact NGSS like standards or wording or like stuff like that. And so I think, again, like I use the ideas, but not necessarily like follow it religiously.
How closely are they tied into your education classes? Is that like a main focus, a main component of them? Or do they just say, oh, here, by the way, there's this, try this out and see what you think?
Um, so this is like our first semester taking specific like methods classes for science. Like up until now, it's been more the general ones. But in this one methods class that we're in right now, it really is about anchoring phenomena, inquiry based things. Like that's kind of how we have to format our lesson plans and things like that. But just from my experience right now, both Andrew and I are doing our observations at University Laboratory High School. And so they are also in a similar boat as you guys there, where they are not using what we are being told about necessarily in our class. So I was just curious about that for sure.
What class is it? CI 401?
Yes.
So, I guess I have a question from my very limited experience in teaching. So in terms of, as Jeff, you mentioned, sometimes you have to sort of pivot and teach a completely new class that you haven't taught before. What is your approach in terms of developing those classes, developing lesson plans, that type of thing?
That's a great question. Well, then they say the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so oftentimes I find myself relearning it. And usually that first year when I teach a new class is honestly when I often enjoy it the most, because I'm learning with my students. And that's one of the most exciting things about being a new teacher, is that you're learning content and teaching at the same time that the students are learning the same thing. And so it's kind of neat to have this learning experience together. But that said, involves a lot of creativity, a lot of late nights, and yeah, that's all I got for right now.
With that, I know you guys have both kind of mentioned how you've kind of just been recently finding out about what you're teaching next semester. How much, I know this is also very district dependent as well, but like how much control would you say you have over that? Where like if they wanted you to teach a certain class, do you have the ability to be like, I can't do that, or do you have to choose what you're able to teach, that kind of thing?
I would say it depends on the district. I would say districts that are a little more like, I don't know what word to use, not elite, but like a little bit, for lack of a better word, we'll just say it. I can't think of a better one right now, but those might be more so like where you're maybe told what to teach, whereas maybe districts that the opposite of that, I'm struggling with how to describe it right now, but like maybe they would be able to ask you, or like you'd have a little bit more freedom. Typically, just from what I've been told as a newer, younger teacher, saying no to something, like if they ask, like for example, they asked me to teach physics my second year that I, had never taught. Like I didn't even have the physics endorsement. I mean, my chemistry endorsement allows me to teach science, but like saying no wasn't really an option, And so especially when they're saying like, oh, we need you to do this, you're the only option. And so in that case, they kind of like told me. And so I had to, but on the flip side of that, this year, the district that I'm at asked me if I wanted to teach AP Chem, and I'm in the starting my master's. And so I would like to have that first in chemistry before I take on AP Chem, just because I feel like that will help me. And so I told them like, I don't feel ready right now. And like, they were fine with that because they brought it up as a question, not as like a telling me type thing. And so down the line, I feel like I would have maybe said yes, but right now, since I was planning on getting my master's last year, but then that didn't work out with just the job switch and everything. So that is on the agenda for 2024 for me. And then once that, then yes, but I would say that question, to come back and circle to the question that you asked, is dependent on the district, definitely from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Like my principal asked me if I wanted to teach geometry next year. I'm not sure how much of a question it really was, but it was couched as a question. Um, and in a small school, you kind of have both sides also. I guess kind of like in a large school, just for different reasons. In a small school, you have a little more flexibility. You can propose new classes, and things are generally more flexible and accommodating. But on the flip side, you oftentimes it's all hands on deck, and so you have multiple preps and multiple classes, and things need to get done and things need to get taught, and so you just have to pitch in and do what you have to do.
You guys mentioned you're at very different districts. If you could go back, would you want to switch to either a smaller or either a larger district based on your experiences now?
I mean, I'll go first if that's okay. I feel like I'm jumping on it, but
Sure.
I would say, I mean, I'm definitely like a creature of habit, and like I fall into routine very easily. And I just grew up in an area of like bigger schools. And like, I mean, I said my high school had almost 3,000 kids. And so I was just so used to that. And I fell to like that just because there is, like there's just always so much like going on. And like I love sports. So I liked going to like the sporting events, like with all the people, and just like, having just such a variety of teachers to get to meet through my classes that I took, or like activities or stuff like that. And Prospect and Wheaton are both similar in the sense that they're around 2,000 kids each. Yeah, so a little smaller than my high school, but still big, And I will say I do like it, just in the sense of it's like I had the 3 preps last year, and kudos to my smaller school folks out there. You guys are amazing, because I was struggling and stressed. Not struggling, but just it was a lot. And so I definitely like that. Like it's not the norm to have a lot of preps. Like the norm is to have less preps because there are more people. And I don't know, I'm just very like, I like lots of people around, and like a bunch of the kids and stuff. And just, so I would say I like being at the bigger school, but who knows, if I grew up in a small town and, was used to that, maybe I would like that. So for me, it's kind of just, I I like what I know type thing. And I truthfully have never been at any small school in any capacity. And so I just don't know. So I'm definitely biased towards that. And yeah, that's kind of my answer.
Yeah, I'm the same way, just opposite. I'm most familiar with small schools. I went to a small school and I teach in a small school. Has its disadvantages, like Ariana said. I have 5 preps, and that's been the way it's been for several years now. So you do have to, like I said, just kind of just stand up and do what you need to do. But on the other hand, on the flip side, I really enjoy being able to know everybody, and we are like a little. It's cliche, but we are kind of like a family, and you can become much. I think you can become very tight with the community too. So and everybody knows everybody.
So besides classes, what kind of fun things do you also do as part of your jobs? Or I mean, besides teaching classes, I mean.
Let's see. Um, you mean like sponsors, coaching, that kind of stuff at school?
Sure, yeah, whatever.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I was an assistant track coach for 1 year with practically zero prior experience before, so that was interesting. But I'm also the sponsor of our academic challenge team. We're going to Eastern for state next week, taking 14 kids down there. As far as like clubs go, we have kind of an informal astronomy science club. We have some star parties of a nighttime outside on campus a few times a year. Um, so those are first things that come to mind.
Are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I did Science Olympiad at Prospect, and that was very interesting. Well, my whole first year was interesting. It was during COVID, and so my entire student teaching experience was Zoom. It is a blessing. I'm still here today, but yeah, the first time I ran a lab was my first year of teaching. So that was a lot, but it was good. We were here. And so why did I say that? Oh yeah, so Prospect. So Science Olympiad, the first year was basically Science Olympiad, like virtual mode. And so we didn't actually like attend any of the competitions. And like we just did it through online platforms and stuff. And so that was fun. And then second year, obviously less of COVID restrictions. And so kind of back to normal. I am not doing Science Olympiad at Wheaton. I would say like as much as I enjoyed it and just kind of running the different events and like, you know, working with those students that I normally don't work with in class. I just feel like my day is so much science that I almost enjoy doing something not science related outside. And I know some people like are just want to stay in like what they know. Like the person I was with, like he was just like chemistry like all the time like, and it is for me too, but like outside of class, like I feel like I wanted something a little different. And so this past year I've helped out a little bit. So with Wheaton, it's a little different. They have you like kind of volunteer before they assign you to anything. And so I've helped out a little bit with NHS and just like their applications and whatnot. And then there's also a mentoring program for freshmen where like juniors and seniors come in during like half of the freshmen's lunch where they have this like required little study hall as part of their lunch. And so the mentors come in like once a week first semester and like give them, you know, tips to transition to high school and just like stuff that would be helpful for freshmen to know. Like homecoming is coming up. Like, what do you do then? And so I helped out with that and that's been really fun. And so I think for me going forward, I'm probably going to stick to more of that stuff. And maybe not as much Science Olympiad or like, you know, stuff like that, just because I already have so much science in my day and it's great, but I kind of want something a little different.
Get away from chemistry for a bit, I guess.
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I was wondering if you guys could share anything about like the process of finding a job in teaching and like what that looks like, maybe what the interview kind of process looks like for that. Yeah.
Never mind, I was gonna bring it up. Jeff, you can go first for this one. Just
Well, the last time I interviewed for a teaching job was 23 years ago. So I found the job in the classified section of a newspaper. So things have changed a little bit since then. Um, um, so I think I'll defer to you, Ariana,
okay, I didn't know
and
if
then
you like
I'll
had
just
some
supplement.
like amazing
No,
advice for them
no,
because okay,
no.
I mean I guess I have something. So interview process, I would say okay, let me remember the name. At K-12 job spot, I think is what it's called. K-12 job. So I think that's what it's called. Yes, K-12 job spot. We're gonna go with it. So it's a website that you can plug in and you can basically put in like where you're living, like what radius you want to find jobs in. Jennifer looks like she's typing. I'm hoping that's what it's called. But you can put in a radius, you put in where you're living, and it basically comes up with all the jobs that are posted in that area. So super easy to check. Hey, there it is. Yeah, that's it. And it like comes up and populates whenever you like press enter. So it refreshes constantly, right? And so it'll pull from any jobs posted in that radius. And so that's really nice because you don't have to check each individual district's website, which you still can. Like if you have a district in mind, you can just check Frontline. And so Frontline is like the website that I should say most. There was one district I applied to that didn't use Frontline, but most schools use where you that's like where you apply through. So you could check that, but the only problem with checking Frontline is you have to say like, District 200 Frontline, and then that's just that district. So K-12 job spot is nice because it shows you everything. And so I definitely check, you have to check that like religiously, like all the time, and definitely be on it for sure. And so, yeah, and then I just, honestly, I applied to as many schools like in my area that I could and just kind of went through the interview process, which I do have stuff to say to that, but I'll stick to this first before we move on to that. But yeah, and then just kind of kept seeing what was popping up, and I would say start looking like end of February, honestly. And I know that sounds early, but there are some districts that do post at the end of February, and there are districts that I found will actively post through end of April, really. And like that's kind of like the hot time, and there's obviously still postings in the summer, way less, but there's still obviously things that come up. But I would say like the hot time is definitely March, 100%, and then even like a little bit of April. So that website is bookmark that, like that's going to be your best friend for sure. And yeah, I gotta talk interview stuff. That was answered that part of your question.
Yeah, I guess we
Um,
could talk about
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I've heard my principal talk, and so like I know we just hired 2 new teachers for next year already, and he went to a job fair at Illinois State University, and I don't know if you guys are eligible to attend those, but Illinois State is known as a teacher college, and so that's often the first place that administrators look is a teacher college. So if you are able to attend one of those, it might be worthwhile as well.
Yeah, job fairs are amazing. There's another one. If I don't know where you are all from, but there's one that they host every year, like March 3rd or around like very beginning of March. And they usually host it at the District 214's like main like district office, which is funny because that's the district Prospect was at. So but they host like all the surrounding schools at the district office in 214, and it's just this huge job fair that is just disgustingly packed with people. Like you couldn't even like believe the number of people that go to this thing. And so if you're able to, well, past this year actually, never mind. Okay, that's a bad advice. But next year if you wanted to, but that one is a huge one. And so job fairs, I would definitely say are big. And I definitely agree with Illinois State too, but even like U of I being able to throw this name around, like there is going to be such a high probability of someone being an alum from here when you're out applying. And then that just sparks up immediate conversation, and who doesn't love, a fellow Illinois alum. And so that is also really, really nice to having gone to such a gigantic school, which is really nice. Oh, something on job fair. Oh yeah.
Yeah, this year's education job fair also passed, but There is usually one in the spring semester. And then interview, as you were mentioning, Arianna.
I learned so much about interviews this year. So that's why I'm like excited to share the knowledge. But so yeah, so obviously I had like my first round of interviews, my first time applying, which was 2021. And that was also partially COVID. And so a lot of it was like through Zoom. But then this past year that I applied, yeah, the last year that I applied was normal interview sessions and stuff. So truthfully, like I hadn't really had a lot of experience my first year around because of all like the, COVID restrictions and stuff. And so I was like kind of new again to interviewing last year, literally like a year ago from now. But I would say, so the first interview I had for a district, it was like a panel interview. There was like 5 people. They were all like some part of the school, and when she told me that, I was like, what? Like I'm, used to like interviewing like this, with like one other person. And now she's telling me I'm sitting in a room with like 6 people. I'm like, okay. And so she ended up knowing someone from Prospect, which was where I was at before. So after the interview, I mean, they didn't move me on they just said I wasn't a good fit. And so one of the ladies that was on the interview panel, like kind of was talking to my mentor, just saying like constructive criticism for me, which I really thought was nice. And one thing was like, I always talk fast. So that's something I'm always told is to talk slower. But also like with a panel like because I was trying to look at everyone, and they said with a panel like that, the person that asks you the question is the person you want to direct your answer to. Because I was trying to look at everybody when I was answering, and I was just kind of like, woo, woo, and they were like, the person that asks you the question, direct your answer to them. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was one thing. The second thing, which is like golden, they actually said you can bring in like a sheet, like of paper with stuff that you have written on it that you just want to like, remember to say. And I did not know that at all. And they were like, most school, like administrators don't have a problem with that, like ask. But it was just topics and stuff like, because there's really frequent questions, you're going to be asked about. Like, I knew I was going to be asked about equity in like some capacity, right? You're going to be asked about like hard situations in class. Like a student says like a racist comment to someone else. How do you respond? Like those types of questions, like you kind of know you're going to be asked, the more like the harder questions, like you just anticipate it. Or even the easier questions that you just want to have, really solid responses to. Like I had bullet points and written that down just on like a piece of, printer paper. And every interview I had done after that, I brought that with me, and no one had an issue with it. I asked beforehand, and that was such a lifesaver because honestly, I really didn't look at it that much, but knowing it was in front of me eased my stress so much. Like I was so much more confident and like less stressed because it was a safety blanket. Like I knew it was there. Honestly, I probably looked at it twice, maybe during an entire interview, but just knowing it was there, like I was just so much calmer. And so definitely keep that in the back of your mind. Like ask first if you can have a sheet, but it's not like you're taking a test. Like it doesn't, whatever. But I would say those are probably, my 2 biggest pieces of advice. And just be yourself. Don't try and give too much of like the jargony answers. Like if you're throwing too many like buzzwords in there, like differentiation, like cooperative learning, NGSS, like you're just shooting all of them. Like that kind of seems a little rehearsed and not like natural. And so I would say definitely talk, kind of pick and choose a few that you're passionate about. And like, hit those, but don't try and like throw in every single like buzzword that you can think of, because then they'll be able to read through that. Like you're not like, I just like tell myself, you're not the first person that they interview. Like they've done this before, and so they can kind of read through that. And so just be true to yourself, like speak from your heart, just what kind of draws you to teaching. And at the end of the day, they have to work with you. Like, yes, they're interviewing you as professionals, but you're also people. Like they need to like you and see that you can mesh with their team. So like if you're trying to put on this like face that is not really you, like that's not going to help at all. And so just, being yourself and kind of just showing them like what you'd be able to bring to the table.
Yes, I would agree with that entirely. Just be yourself. Yeah.
Some great advice. I guess I had a more curious question, just off topic, maybe even. So you mentioned COVID, right? So what impacts do you think that has had, like remote learning, especially a lot of the STEM students, like working in labs, obviously during COVID, that was so different. So what impacts have you seen in your students in the more recent years since COVID?
Yeah, I'd say COVID was absolutely horrible, all the way around. There's no slicing or dicing. It was just absolutely horrible. And then the results were horrible as well, as you probably heard. By now, I've noticed that my students, we seem to have worked through that and kind of passed the students on, unfortunately. So now they're at the university level. But they're the first couple years afterwards, there were a lot of holes in their content, especially in their math abilities. They're, they just didn't know things. So we had to go back and reteach a lot of basic fundamental things before we could even get to the interesting content stuff. But there were some blessings to it too, I guess, because it made me move a lot of stuff online. Like I'd never used Google Classroom before because I didn't really see the purpose in a science class on how we could use that. But now I have a Google Class for all my classes. I've recorded lectures and notes for many, if not most of my lessons for most of my classes. And we found that's been a valuable resource for the kids too. If I'm ever gone, they could just watch that. To study and review, they can pull up the old videos and notes and stuff and go through that. So in that sense, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. But overall, COVID was an absolutely horrible thing. But fortunately, it's nice. I'm to the point where I don't even consider this normal anymore. I don't have to say, oh, we're getting back to normal, because it's just kind of taken for granted that this is normal. So I am not sorry to see most of that stuff go.
I agree with everything. I definitely think COVID showed us how much the world needs teachers, because you can't really learn through a computer screen. I think in terms of some social like interactions and just like social skills, that those definitely were kind of, taking a hit with. Also math, like being in the math and science world, like definitely, especially my first and second year teaching, which was, basically in the heart of COVID / right after it. They basically cheated their entire way through math, and they would tell you to your face, like they would literally tell it to your face, like, yeah, I used photo math, which is basically where you take a picture and it tells you, yeah, okay. And so like they'll tell you that to your face, and they're like, I don't know anything. And so that was really hard, especially teaching algebra 1 when you're trying to, get the fundamentals, to them. But I would say that, yeah, I mean, it definitely showed us how to really maximize, technology, and that it's definitely like it's a good thing. And it also, we don't want too much of a good thing, right? Like there's definitely times when it's applicable. And I mean, in high school, I was one of the first few years of a one-to-one pilot with iPads. And so I had an iPad my entire high school, and so did the teachers. And so that was kind of like the one-to-one aspect. And where I taught my first 2 years at Prospect was also one-to-one. So all the kids had iPads, we had iPads. Wheaton is not like that, but all the kids have Chromebooks, and so similar. But so I've really just grown up with the technology, and I definitely think COVID was too much technology. I think it's definitely needed in the classroom. Like I will say that. There's definitely lots of, pros, like Jeff was saying, if kids are absent, it makes being absent super easy, right? You just, you can send notes, like videos, whatever. And especially like finding stuff on YouTube or like Khan Academy, super easy. But again, there's definitely that need for that in-class interaction. And I think kids, like, again, Jeff said, are finally starting to come out of it. But I also think that they are just like, I don't know, I feel like they're still so prone to just plugging everything into Google. Like even just yesterday, I saw like the balancing equations website open on a kid's Chromebook. I'm like, what are you doing? And so I think like this part of that from COVID is still ingrained in some of them, of just, I can use photomath, I can use balancing equations, I can use this. And it's like, no, like you need to know how to do it on your own. So there's definitely still some lingering effects that I think we're going to see for a while.
And as you said perfectly, and somewhat selfishly, it was great for job security because before you'd always hear people talking about, oh, we don't really need teachers. Everyone can just learn on Google and the internet, and schools are dying. But I think COVID and the shutdowns clearly showed the value that teachers and schools as a larger community have in shaping a kid, and it's not replaceable.
Absolutely, and especially in Illinois, there's such a shortage of
Right.
especially chemistry and STEM teachers, so they're definitely needed.
Yeah, I will say applying as a science math person, so much better than English and social studies. There's so many of them. Even just at job fairs I've been to, like just talking to random people, like they're gonna be English or social studies. Like that's if you're like, a stats person, that's where you wanna, that there's just so many of them. And so I would say, yeah, biology is definitely more of the in terms of science, more popular. You're probably gonna, if you chose, a random group of people, you're probably gonna have more biology teachers in there versus chem and physics. So, yeah, you're definitely in a good spot there.
Yeah, I think we have definitely been starting to see that because in our current like cohort for the secondary ed minor, I think there's about 100 of us, and out of that, 5 of us are science, and out of that, 2 of us are chemistry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's only 5 of us in our current cohort.
Wow.
So that's our
Okay.
classes.
What about
Like,
English? 70?
yeah, there's I would say I think it's mostly history or mostly social studies and then English. There's actually more ag people than us, which is kind of funny. There's like 10 ag education people, and then again only 5 science people. But yeah.
Wow.
But
How
yeah,
many physics? 0, 1?
0. There's me and Andrew are chem, and then there's 2 bio, and then there's 1 master's in bio. So that's what we pretty much have right now.
I just
Wow.
matched the odds. I just named there.
Exactly,
There's
yeah.
my point.
Huh.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you get jobs, so that's good. No complaining.
Going back to like when we were talking about technology, is there any like circumstances where like or type of activity that you think is better with technology or like better on paper, like in that kind of thing?
I love PhET. I don't know if you guys have used PhET simulations. I think like the ones that stick out to me, structure of the atom and gases, those two you just can't, like there is literally no better way I have found than especially the gases one. And talking about partial pressure or just, PV and T, whatever, like that shows it ridiculously well. And like students get it. Like there is no replicating that. And so I think for some things like that, it's really helpful. Even the balancing one, like my low kids that could not balance to save their life, like they use that PhET and like that helped them. And so I love PhET. I think it's really easy. I think the kids like it. It's like a little game for them. And so I definitely think that that's helpful. Trying to think what other applications I like. Class Kick is a really good one too. I don't know if you've heard of that, but basically it's and again, these schools have to pay for the subscriptions, and so there's also like that piece, but my school does pay for Class Kick, and it's really nice. I use it for math homework. That is the only way I assign math homework is through Class Kick. And so basically what it is I assign it and then the students can work on it, but I see the work in real time. So like if I go on it, I can see like Jimmy working on it, like when he is, and I can also leave comments to help him on there, or he could like raise his hand on there and I can like see that and like answer a question or like leave a comment like right on like it's like a slide, and like so you could put different slides and stuff. And so when I check homework, I literally just have to press like see student work and I can just see like all of their work. Again, it's in real time too. I mean, when they're done, it just shows it is done. But so like stuff like that too is really nice. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, those are kind of the big two that come into my head. But it also just like gets rid of how much like paper you need. And again, it's like if kids are absent or whatever, it's like they just have it accessible to them. They don't lose it. Like, and I'm very well aware that some people there are some teachers in my school that would totally disagree with what I'm saying right now. And that, kids get distracted and whatever. And it's like, yes, I look to see the benefits of it. And I think that once, a kid has their phone next to them, if they're doing homework on paper, like if they're going to get distracted, they're going to get distracted. They all have cell phones now. And so, yeah, I don't know. I like it. I'm pretty high technology in my classroom for the most part. Yeah.
I would have to agree completely with both of those suggestions, Fet. Chem, as you know, is pretty abstract. So anytime you can kind of bring that into a person's real life, that's great. And then online homework is also really useful too. Like AP, for example, has a AP classroom where kids can do their homework based entirely on old AP questions. So they get both the content and the format and the style. So that's a great way to prepare for the test. I still like to write a lot of my own homework questions and have them do it on paper. But as far as test preparation, it's fantastic.
I will say, as much as I love technology, I think tests need to be on paper. Like that's just like that is the
Yeah.
like test quizzes, like summative assessments, like paper all day. I think there's just too much technology can go wrong or like whatever. I definitely think paper is needed for that. But it just makes keeping things organized, or like if you need to update something, like if you make a typo, like there's so many times where I've like had to switch a procedure for a lab. Like someone has done it first period and she's like, oh my God, this needs to be fixed. Okay, fix it, re-upload it. Like super, super fast, super easy. I just see so many benefits of it. Again, there's always obviously time for paper, again, like, tests or whatnot, but yeah, I love it. I think it's good.
Awesome. We only have a couple more minutes to go for our hour here today. So panelists, any last minute thoughts or words of wisdom for our two students who are here today?
Well, I hope you enjoy teaching. I have for 23 years and I wouldn't do anything else. It's kind of, I don't really have a reference because I've been teaching my whole life, but it's kind of a lifestyle. Just the whole idea of this community surrounded by these people that you develop friendships with, your coworkers and your students. For example, I'm invited in the next couple months to 2 weddings from former students. They update me when they get into med school or grad school. When they come back from school on breaks, they want to have lunch with you or ice cream or something like that. So it's a great opportunity to get to know some really bright and promising people and really develop some possibly lifelong friendships with them. I still keep in contact with some of them from 20 years ago. But it's also just a lifestyle. You got a fantastic summer vacation. I'm not going to lie, that's a great benefit to teaching. And it just allows you to kind of slow down in the summer. If you're thinking about having family, teaching is great for family life too. It's made me be a better father. So I've really enjoyed it. There was a time about my 4th year when I was getting burned out, and so I was looking for a different career, and so I even went so far as to an interview. And during the interview, and there's no way I would have ever gotten this job anyway. So, but during this interview, when I was describing like what I was doing and how I'd be qualified for this job, I was kind of thinking in the back of my head like, wait a minute, I enjoy doing those things and I want to keep doing those things. So like during the interview, even before I realized I wasn't going to get the job, I realized that I didn't want the job either. I wanted to stick with teaching. So it's been great for me. So you have your up days, you have your down days, you have a lot of days in between, but overall I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to everything you just said, with like kids like coming back and like reaching out to me and like graduating and then like stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to that part where like I've been able to like teach for long enough where that happens. Obviously, my first group of kids are seniors this year, so they'll be graduating. I'll be thinking of them. But yeah, I would say I love it. I mean, to me personally, like I love chemistry. I love getting teach, but the students are really what make it. Like institute days and like days where the students aren't there, they just seem so long and like boring. And it's just like, okay. But the kids really just like they make it. And now this is like the best time of year, like March, April, May, because like you've built up all those relationships. And like now it's just like it's just fun. Like the kids, they know you, like you have that like back and forth banter with them. Like it's just so enjoyable and like it's truly so rewarding. And like at least for me, like kids especially that I see like struggle in the beginning of the year and then like become to like grow and like flourish towards the end. Like it's just such a rewarding job. And like sometimes I'll like come home and like tell my family like about stuff and like get like really like into it or like emotional and they're like wow, like you really care about what you do. And like that like exactly like Jeff said, it's really a lifestyle. And I mean it's definitely not or 12 months of work shoved into 9 months. Like you're definitely working. You know, you're coming home, you're doing work. I mean, definitely finding a work-life balance is huge. And I just have started trying to figure that out my 3rd year. Your first and second year, your first year is hard. Like there's no way around it. Like it is hard. You're going to have, you know, I cried some days, it happens, you know, like it's hard. It's a lot of work. You're working around the clock. Like, but it does get so much better. And like, as long as you do find that like work-life balance, then you'll start to be able to see like, okay, this isn't just so much like, you know, like work. It's like something that I get to do and like, you know, enjoy and get to watch these, you know, kids grow. And like, you know, it's even crazy, like from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, like how much they have grown, you know. And last year, or at Prospect, since I taught physics, I had some kids sophomore year for chemistry and junior year then for physics. And that 2-year like transformation is insane. And so just very rewarding. It's a lot of work, but it's the best work, I think. And yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome. That was so heartwarming to hear. It reminds me of my teachers who had such a profound impact on when I was a high school student, and that kind of what also led me to pursuing chemistry in college. You all are doing such meaningful work and literally changing lives and educating our next generation of students and change makers. So I appreciate you both for all the hard work that you're doing and continue to do. Hopefully this inspires our 2 students and other students who also see this panel as they embark on this journey. But thank you so much for being here tonight, spending some time with us and talking to us about your careers. This was so fun. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the evening. And as I said multiple times before, I will be posting this video next week to our SCS Careers YouTube channel. Tomorrow we have our last panel on careers in forensics. So if any of you are interested in that, we look forward to seeing you there. All right, I
Best of
hope you
luck,
all
guys.
Yes,
Thank
best of luck.
you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
coming.
much.
Thank you
have
so
a great
much.
night.
Welcome. Okay. Thank you.